This week in Jamaica Now, Kartel loses out on getting alleged phone tampering evidence into his murder appeal.
We are reporting an estimated real value-added growth of 3.4% for the October to December 2022 quarter, relative to the corresponding quarter of 2021.
Jamaica's economic growth is returning to pre-COVID levels.
The elections, Madam Speaker, is of importance. However, the government is seeking a little more time.
Local government elections delayed again. The opposition is angry. And stricter bail conditions for the 4 women nabbed in the Sagicor Bank fraud. I'm Jovan Johnson and this is Jamaica Now. The attorneys for convicted murderer Vybz Kartel say they are looking forward to arguing the entertainer's appeal before the London-based Privy Council after suffering a major setback this week. Director of Public Prosecutions Paula Llewellyn confirmed that the final appellate court for Jamaica refused Kartel's application to introduce new evidence about a telephone to support his case.
It is not the end of Mr. Kartel and the others. Their appeal, this ruling by the Privy Council has to deal with what one could call an incidental issue that arose after they had applied for and got permission from our courts to have the phone that was the central exhibit in the trial examined by an expert appointed by Mr. Kartel's lawyers. That expert did in fact examine the phone in the presence of the prosecution expert. This was done in Jamaica, and it is the result of that examination that they sought permission from the Privy Council to seek to call as what we call fresh evidence through the mouth of the expert, that basically, and other applications attached to that. That is what the Privy Council refused.
Kartel, Sean Storm Campbell, Kahira Jones and Andre St John were convicted for the August 2011 killing of Clive Lizard Williams at a house in Havendale, St Andrew. They were all sentenced to life in prison in April 2014. The government used its majority this week to pass a bill in the House of Representatives to postpone local government elections last held in 2016. The parish polls were due in February.
The government is sharply focused on 2 main things. 1, building national resilience against any further economic shock, whether caused by man-made or natural disaster. 2, the expansion and the maintenance of strong economic growth that all our citizens can feel and see at a personal level.
Local Government Minister Desmond McKenzie says making the municipality of Portmore into a parish was among the reasons for another delay.
The Portmore Municipal Council have requested further time for consultations, and we believe that in the interest, Madam Speaker, because we want, when the time rolls around, Madam Speaker, the people of Portmore will move out to cast their votes as the 15th parish of Jamaica, Madam Speaker.
But the opposition People's National Party was not happy, and its members urged the government to call the election after Mr. McKenzie said his side was not afraid to face the electorate. Now, successive administrations have delayed parish elections, but opposition leader Mark Golding argued that changes to the law in 2016 provided for a fixed 4-year cycle for local government polls.
There was no provision for any extension. When COVID licked and Jamaica was reeling, they called a general election in the heights of COVID. It resulted in community spread. Local government elections fell due by February 2021. They came to this parliament with a bill to extend it for a year, citing COVID as a reason. We didn't oppose it, because although we saw and highlighted the rank hypocrisy in what they were doing, given that they had just called a general election in the height of COVID with devastating consequences for the country, they were extending local government and the period for it by 1 year. But COVID was on the land, and we were responsible, and we said, we understand, we will let it go. February 2022, they brought legislation here. On the very day that the Prime Minister announced in this House that there would be no more need for disaster risk management orders, and social distancing was a thing of the past, and Jamaica was back to normal and was going to be building back for recovery. The very same day, the minister brought another bill to amend the law again, citing COVID as a reason. It was spurious then, and this is spurious now. That year has expired, and they're coming here again because they don't want to call election now, and citing economic reasons for it. The Minister for South East St Andrew.
I am that.
Our Minister.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.
The member for South East St Andrew and future Minister of Finance said, pointed out that to be citing economic and financial reasons for undermining democracy in the country and acting inconsistently with the spirit of the Constitution that provides for a democratic system of governance is spurious and disingenuous and cannot be supported.
Jamaica's economy is estimated to have grown by 5.1% between January and December 2022. It's a performance the authorities say shows a return to pre-COVID levels of growth. Director General of the Planning Institute of Jamaica, PIOJ, Dr. Wayne Henry, has pointed to improved results in the services and goods-producing industries.
We are reporting an estimated real value-added growth of 3.4% for the October to December 2022 quarter, relative to the corresponding quarter of 2021. The estimated outturn for the review quarter largely reflected the positive impact of, one, a strengthening of economic activity, as some industries showed signs of returning to and surpassing their pre-COVID levels of output. Two, increased external demand, supported by growth in the economies of Jamaica's main trading partners. Three, increased capacity utilization, as a major alumina producer ramped up production following their reopening in the previous quarter. And four, increased business and consumer confidence associated with the prospects for strengthened economic outturn in the short to medium term.
Bauxite companies Noranda Jamaica Partners and New Day Aluminium Jamaica Limited have appealed a court order blocking them from mining lands in St Ann and Trelawny, arguing that their survival is under threat and the Jamaican economy faces major upheaval. 9 residents got an order on January 20 that restrains the companies from mining activities until their lawsuit for alleged breach of rights is heard later this year. Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark says the Attorney General has been named as a defendant and is vigorously opposing the residents' claim. He says the sector is of vital economic and developmental significance, pointing out that it supports relatively high-paying jobs which brought in about $300 to $400 million in foreign exchange in each of the last 2 years. However, noting that the sector contributes less than 2% of Jamaica's GDP and 1% of jobs, economist Dr. Damian King said the idea that the sector's demise would be such a blow to the economy and for the environment to be sacrificed is unsupported. The restoration bill for the Cornwall Regional Hospital in Montego Bay, St James is now $10.5 billion, doubling the initial cost for completion. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Health and Wellness Dunstan Bryan says the increase is to facilitate Phase 3 of the redevelopment project. That phase is expected to cover the rehabilitation of floors 1 to 10 of the building and the procurement of furniture, information technology supplies and medical equipment. But opposition spokesman on health, Dr. Marie Sky, is raising questions about the level of oversight being given to the project amid the significant increase in the estimates. 2 years ago, Dr. Guy pointed out that the renovation could cost approximately $12 billion, but Health and Wellness Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton dismissed the projections. Work began on the hospital in 2019 and was to be completed next month. However, a further extension has delayed the completion date by 2 years to March 2025. Cuba has expressed no issue with Jamaica's decision to end a special arrangement for visa-free transit for Cuban nationals come March 13. The travel exemption allowed Cubans a 72-hour window to be in Jamaica for transit to a third country. The Embassy of the Republic of Cuba in Jamaica says the move is not expected to disturb the bilateral agreements between the Caribbean neighbors. Earlier, National Security Minister Dr. Horace Chang announced that the move to end the visa-free transit arrangement was because the arrangement is being used by Cuban travelers as part of efforts to get to Central America and then to the United States. The U.S. has complained about the influx of Cuban travelers who have been making their way to the U.S.-Mexico border. He said for the period July 2022 to December 2022, tens of thousands of Cuban nationals transited Jamaican ports en route to Central America and did not return. The visa-free transit for Cubans will be discontinued on March 13. All other travel provisions remain in place. Stricter bail conditions have been imposed on the 4 women fighting allegations that they were involved in the alleged theft of $65 million from Sagicor Bank. Former employees Trisha Moulton, her sister Alicia Moulton-White, and Malika MacLeod and Tishan Samuels are charged in the alleged fraud. On Tuesday, a judge ordered them to submit their travel documents and fingerprints. They are also to report to the police twice weekly. The judge denied Mrs. Moulton-White's request to travel to Canada to deal with what her lawyer called a delicate matter. The case file was incomplete, and the judge ordered partial or full disclosure to the defense team by March 31. The court extended bail for the women until April 27, when the matter will again be mentioned. The National Water Commission (NWC) has started to restrict water supply to sections of capital Kingston and St Andrew as drought conditions continue to impact inflows to surface water sources. The measures took effect on Monday. The NWC says the current water level at the Hermitage Dam is 63.5%, while the Mona Reservoir is at 76%. The state utility provider says given the continuous decline in storage at its major facilities, it has considered carefully and concluded that it has to take the necessary actions to preserve water supply to Kingston and St Andrew. Earlier in February, Minister with responsibility for water, Senator Matthew Samuda, disclosed that Jamaica is currently experiencing a meteorological drought. He said in coming weeks, the government will announce the steps to be taken in response to the drought. And that's it for this edition of Jamaica Now, your weekly review of the big news stories. Send us your comments at onlinefeedback@gleanerjm.com. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Jamaica Gleaner and on Facebook at Gleaner Jamaica. Like this video on our YouTube page, turn on the notification and subscribe today. I'm Jovan Johnson, and before we go, we hear from Tyree Green, the 21-year-old youngster who was allegedly assaulted by his schoolmates in Kingston recently. He's battling autism.
Okay, talk to me about the day of the incident.
The day when I together with some group of youth in a thing, and the girl they side of me at 16. And then we walk and then say them have a class and then say come. And then the youth call me, and then when he call me ask me be a Christian. And then he call the girl inside of me at 16. And then he ask the girl for our parents and then something. I ask her which part sleep. And then call me in class and then start kick me and start box me. I ask me who the girl.
Was it somebody who came and intervened?
No, I shoot me out of the class.
So they beat you and shoved you out?
Yeah. And then they check me.
They threatened you?
About the clock street.
What was the threat?
Eh?
What was the threat? Have you gone back to school since the incident?
Eh? No, I never go back to school on Thursday morning. I sleep and then call me with a mouse and say come to school. And then go by the station and report everything.
Are you afraid of going back to school?
Yeah, I'm afraid to go back to school. Some people do things.
I'm afraid of them. I'm afraid of them.
You say it's not the first time.
And it's not the first.
Is that same particular group of boys?
Yeah.
Right now, he must go do a brain scan because of them box when him brain done the right thing already. So after can go do a brain scan, right now I walk on a limb.